There's always going to be a certain level of fragmentation. Some inventory sources make a decision not to make themselves available in the general programmatic marketplace.
Marketing Architects.
Hello, and welcome to the Marketing Architects, a research-first podcast dedicated to answering your toughest marketing questions. I'm Elena Jasper. I run the marketing team here at Marketing Architects, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Angela Voss, the CEO of Marketing Architects, and Rob DeMars, the Chief Product Architect of Misfits and Machines.
Howdy, howdy.
Good day.
And we're also joined by a special guest, Marrika Zapiler, the Director of Advanced TV at Marketing Architects. Thank you for joining us, Marrika.
Thanks for having me today.
Also known as Smarty Pants Marrika. I don't know that you know that nickname, but we've been calling you that on the pod.
I've not heard that one, but thank you. It's a nice
no pressure.
We welcome your big brain.
I'm glad to join a group of big brains.
We're back with our thoughts on some recent marketing news, always trying to root our opinions in data, research, and what drives business results. Today, we've brought Marrika on the show to discuss what might be the hottest marketing channel of 2024, CTV, otherwise known as connected TV, also known as streaming TV. And just so we're clear, when we're talking about CTV today, we're referring to digitally sold ads that appear on TV screens. So you might watch CTV ads through platforms like Hulu, Roku, Fubo, or now even Netflix or Amazon Prime. And it's not surprising that marketers are excited about CTV. It's supposed to be what we always wanted from traditional TV. The brand building reach of television combined with the targeting and measurement capabilities of digital. CTV is growing while linear TV is shrinking. According to eMarketer in the US, CTV will grow to over $28 billion this year, which is about 7% of total media spending. And CTV users will grow to 233 million, which is 68% of the US population. 192 million of those viewers are adults, which means 82% of adults watch CTV. And even more exciting to marketers, CTV reaches over 80% of 18 to 54-year-olds. So you can use CTV to reach some cord cutters and younger viewers that might not be reachable with linear anymore. CTV has sort of brought TV back into focus for marketers. The long-standing belief that linear or national TV is restricted to big brands with big budgets doesn't apply to CTV. It offers smaller, more measurable tests, which are more appealing to marketers working at brands of all sizes and budgets. So, Ange, I wanted to ask you kind of what you've heard from marketers, because CTV, it's been around for years now, and there was all this excitement and attention. Do you feel like that's still at a high level, or are marketers starting to come down to earth a bit more?
I know, it still feels new, doesn't it? Like, it's been around a while. It's crazy. I think there are big forces at play here, not to complicate the answer, but it's a bit complicated. And I think those forces are a bit in competition with each other. I'd be interested in Marrika's perspective too. She has a lot of conversations with marketers about CTV. So like, why is it exciting? Of course, there's been growing audience. There was an enormous boom during COVID, younger audiences. So just the audience in general is growing as more consumers shift from traditional cable to streaming services. You have potential cord nevers that are in this space. So that's new opportunity. Targeting is a big topic. It's a whole different podcast. We've done it a couple of times related to CTV and targeting. So I won't go into it here, but that's exciting to marketers, just the advancements in targetability in that space, analytics and measurements. We've been waiting for a long time for TV to be more measurable. And this is, of course, a more digital form of television that feels more measurable to marketers. I think there's opportunities like interactive ads. There's potential enhancements in the creative space. There's integration with e-commerce. So there's a lot to be excited about. But I would say that that initial excitement has waned a bit. I think some realities have hit marketers, especially those that have tested the space. The first is, you had mentioned already, just the high costs, right? CTV advertising is more expensive than other digital channels, more expensive than linear, the premium inventory. And if you start to couple that with the thought that you need high quality creative production, it just becomes an exorbitant cost for a lot of marketers. We all remember Netflix declaring that they would charge a $60 CPM for their inventory. Of course, that's changed, but the space is still more expensive than its linear counterpart. I think measurement and attribution has been challenging in the CTV space. We thought digital and the closing of the loop would be easier, but with device graphs being wide, fragmentation existing, it's just not as easy, I think, as marketers maybe have hoped. And then you have things like ad fraud and privacy concerns. So bottom line, I think we're probably past the honeymoon phase. I think there's still excitement, but it's suppressed a bit, I would say.
I'd agree with that. The general level of excitement's gone down, but every time there's a new announcement, like Netflix adding ads or something new in the space, people get excited again. Or when, you're right, there's a topic like data privacy or targeting, it feels like marketers get interested again. And you covered a little bit there about the CTV landscape, how it's changed. It's really kind of been the Wild West the past few years. There's been mergers, new platforms, and more bills than ever before for those of us that are trying to keep up with where we can watch our favorite show. Rob, I know this is a complex and complicated history lesson request, but I'll still ask it. I was hoping you could take a swing at a Rob history lesson for the history of connected TV.
It's time for Rob's history lesson.
You got it. Rob's history lesson, AKA, can you dumb it down a little bit, Rob? Sure, absolutely. This was actually a fascinating topic to research. And as you get into it, a lot of people interpret the definition of connected TV differently. So there's some liberal use of the idea of connected TV in this history lesson. And if anyone has an issue with how it's defined, you know how to reach Elena Jasper. So thank you. Here we go. Connected TV, CTV, also known as smart TV or OTT and many other acronyms, represents a significant evolution in the way television content is consumed. This technology integrates internet connectivity with traditional television, allowing users to stream media, use applications, and browse the internet directly from their TV sets. The roots of CTV trace back to the early, wait for it, 1980s. In Japan, where the first intelligent television receivers were introduced. These TVs were equipped with a chip that allowed the integration of programming and information transmitted over a broadcast signal. However, the concept of streaming content directly through television devices began to take shape in the 1990s. The first ever live stream event occurred in 1993, a concert by the band Severe Tire Damage, which was broadcast online using technology developed at the Xerox Palo Alto Research Center. The real turning point for CTV came with the advent of more sophisticated streaming technologies. In 1995, RealWorks launched the Real Audio Player, which later evolved into the Real Player, adding video streaming capabilities. This set the stage for the rapid development of streaming services. By 2005, YouTube had launched, revolutionizing video content consumption and setting a precedent for the future of streaming platforms. Netflix and Hulu entered the streaming marketplace in 2000 and 2008, respectively, marking the beginning of what would become a massive shift away from traditional cable TV. Netflix initially offered a mix of classic movies and series, and later began producing its own content, starting with the American version of House of Cards in 2013. This move towards original programming by streaming platforms has been a key factor in their growth. Today, CTV is characterized by its on-demand nature, allowing viewers to watch content whenever and wherever they choose, significantly differing from the linear programming model of traditional television. The integration of internet capabilities into television sets has also led to the development of interactive and targeted advertising, transforming how advertisers reach their audiences. As streaming quality and availability continue to improve, more consumers are opting to cut the cable, choosing CTV and streaming services over traditional TV subscriptions. This trend is supported by the increasing number of households using streaming services, platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Hulu becoming household staples. In summary, connected TV has evolved from early experiments in streaming to become a dominant force in the entertainment industry, offering viewers unprecedented control over what, when, and how they watch.
When did you flip Like, what was your first CTV? Do you guys remember?
I mean, if you would consider Netflix, it would be definitely Netflix. I was a big user of the mail-in service of Netflix. So when it became online, I'm like, holy smokes, give me more.
So I got the cord in 2010. And so I went to college in Florida, lived there for a while after college, and then decided to move back to Colorado. My husband and I decided, well, let's just get rid of cable. So I think we were actually fairly early adopters there, starting to kind of build up the streaming services we had access to. And now we have, like everybody else, all the services you could think of. The cost significantly, or at least as much as or close to cable that we were originally trying to get away from.
Yeah, I had cable up until just a couple of years ago because I am loyal to the agency I work for and wanted to help bring the age of cable viewers down. So I just recently switched, and yeah, I have a Hulu like live TV now, and I miss cable a lot of days because Hulu's not always kind to me when I'm trying to watch something that a lot of other people are watching.
Yeah, I'm so confused because I still have Xfinity. I'll shout out to Xfinity, but I don't actually use cable to access it. It all comes through my Apple TV. So it's all so confusing.
It's so complicated, and we could probably spend the whole time talking about it. Rob, I think that was a great history lesson. And Marrika, correct me if I'm wrong, but Rob was talking more about streaming in general. Like connected TV technically is just streaming to a TV set. Like it's the TV on the wall. But Netflix, YouTube can watch that on a computer, and that would be more OTT. It's very complicated, but now marketers, sometimes they say CTV, and they are talking about like more than just TV on the wall, but the technical definition is CTV is streaming to a television set.
Yeah, CTV is actually a device type, and certainly it's taken on additional associations. I'd also say you can kind of broaden that just a little bit. Like if you are watching on a TV that's connected to like a dongle or a Roku or Chromecast or Apple TV or even a gaming console, and that you're still watching it on that TV, then that's still considered CTV. But there's definitely some intricacies in how other devices are defined and how people talk about it.
See, that's why we have Marrika here today. We have the CTV expert, so we don't have to rely on, no offense, Rob's expertise. But thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.
That was wonderful. Well, CTV, it's obviously very exciting, but it's also complicated. It is hard to measure, difficult to buy, complex, expensive, and ever-changing, as Rob just walked through. So with that, Marrika, I think a good place to start might be at the beginning with just buying CTV. It's not as simple for a marketer as buying an ad on Facebook. You could buy CTV programmatically or directly. So could you walk us through the benefits and challenges of both approaches?
CTV straddles both traditional and digital media. Inventory, as we just talked about, is available from a very large number of streaming services, platforms, devices, you name it. The teams that buy CTV also vary. At some agencies or brands, the responsibility lives with traditional media investment teams and programmatic teams at others. That means you'll tend to see more direct buying strategies with that traditional media approach. And that could be something like an IO for a platform like Hulu that's run by Hulu on behalf of the advertiser. It could also be a larger upfront commitment, which again could be run by that network directly, or it could also be transacted partially programmatically as a programmatic guaranteed deal, which I'll talk about more in a couple of minutes. There can also be some benefits to buying direct, but if you're buying direct from multiple sources, you can lose the ability to set user level frequency caps across all of the buys. The targeting is going to vary from buy to buy because each provider is using their own version of the targeting. And the attribution will also be a challenge because you have to use the provider's attribution solution. So you're really not able to measure equally across everything that you're buying. Now, going over to the programmatic side, this is an automated way to run digital media using a demand-side platform or DSP. Through the DSP, you're able to access thousands of inventory sources. By running a campaign in a DSP, you're able to target an audience wherever they're consuming streaming content, rather than picking single sources where you think they might be watching. Now, it's certainly true that your audience is watching Hulu some of the time, but are they watching all of the time? No. People are watching a variety of shows on different services, which means that you need a way to reach them across all or most of those sources. Using a DSP allows you to set up frequency capping across all of those sources as well, which ensures that you're not hitting the same person over and over. You can universally apply targeting, and you can also measure the entire campaign across all sources. Not only can you access the inventory that the DSP has already integrated, But you can also set up deals that you negotiate directly with a publisher or source. Those are called private marketplace deals, or PMPs. So if you go back to the idea of running direct buys programmatically and thinking about that upfront commitment we were talking about, it's possible for at least part of it to be fulfilled programmatically, which means that it runs through the DSP via that programmatic guaranteed, or PG, deal. The drawback to this, however, is that it's essentially a digital version of an IO, and any targeting must be applied by the publisher rather than in-platform. So it's run in the programmatic environment, but it's not truly biddable because you're simply serving ads across inventory that's in the deal that you already committed to purchase at a set CPM. So instead of a live auction environment or real-time auction environment, you're really just running the inventory through the platform so that you're then able to measure it with everything else.
Wow. I mean, there's so many new streaming platforms, right, that are coming at us. How do you guys take that into consideration? Like, how does the fragmentation of CTV influence how you guys are buying and selling stuff?
So unlike linear, where buying is largely consolidated, CTV inventory is bought in a variety of ways, which means that an inventory source can go for a variety of different CPMs depending on how you're accessing it. Now, obviously, if you're buying direct, it would typically have a set cost. You might be able to get one cost if you're just placing, say, a monthly IO. And then if, again, going back to that upfront commitment, if you're committing to like a significantly larger spend amount, then of course you'll be able to get a lower price there. But even within the programmatic ecosystem, that source could be available through one supply side platform at a $20 CPM, and then also available through another supply side platform, or SSP, at a $22 CPM. While there may be PMPs in your DSP that give you access to that source at an $18 CPM. So it can also be difficult to understand exactly what the inventory is that you're getting, since the same source, and let's use Roku as an example, which may come through with a variety of naming conventions, or you could also see some inventory from a Roku device come across as HGTV, but you have no way of knowing that it was from the HGTV app on a Roku device. That can lead to duplication and really points to the importance of supply path optimization, which is really just understanding your supply sources and which are offering the most direct path to any given inventory source at the best price.
So, Marrika, to bring it back to that question about buying programmatically versus direct, is part of the benefit of buying programmatically that you can better navigate now how much fragmentation there is?
There's always going to be a certain level of fragmentation. Some inventory sources make a decision not to make themselves available in the general programmatic marketplace. And so what I mean by that is, if you think about Netflix, which we were discussing before, and by the way, there's been some reports of their CPMs coming down from those original $60 CPMs. That's, again, if you're buying in the upfronts, yes, you can get a lower CPM. But for your everyday advertiser that wants to have ads on Netflix, they're still charging that. So there's still a significant premium there. To get back onto the topic, Netflix has partnered with Microsoft and their DSP. And so right now, you have to buy their inventory through that specific DSP. Now, that's all well and good if you're already a user of their DSP, because you can access other inventory through there. But what if you use something like the Trade Desk or Viant or another DSP? Then if you want to place with Netflix, you have to either go direct or you have to transact it through that DSP. So there's, at least for a while, probably for the foreseeable future, we're still going to see some fragmentation across inventory sources. And while we still see those, we'll call them walled gardens, and not being able to access all streaming sources in one place, that'll continue to be a bit of an issue.
It's not making it super easy for marketers, it sounds like. One thing I wanted to talk about was the price of CTV. Like, we're already covered, it's complex, like all different platforms, the different ways you can buy it. But another thing that's come up a lot in more conversations recently has been the cost, and the cost being prohibitive to marketers. But as you just explained, Marrika, like sometimes the cost can vary according to how you're buying it. Could you walk us through how CTV inventory is priced, and then what you think is causing like the current inflation of costs?
If you're a brand marketer who tends to transact in that upfront space, then CTV CPMs can be lower than linear in that context. For the rest of us who need to worry about performance, though, CTV CPMs vary widely and tend to be much higher than performance dictates. And so we see some more efficient prices that are in the low teens. But when looking at more premium sources, like we were just talking about with Netflix, they can get as high as a $60 or $70 CPM. And so a lot of it goes back to what we talked about with that fragmentation that exists in the marketplace. With all of the separate platforms, the most popular and well-known platforms tend to charge that premium for their inventory by keeping it walled off. And then there's simply the fact that CTV is a newer channel than linear and other traditional media, which means there's been plenty of time for an opportunistic marketplace to have developed that offers marketers access to efficient inventory. We're just starting to see the beginnings of this in CTV, and while prices will be driven down over time, we're just not there yet.
I think originally marketers kind of thought, oh, it's higher prices, but it's going to perform better because it can be more targeted. It's going to work better. But we've seen that hasn't really been the case with CTV, right? It's not able to perform better at those high prices.
And I'd say we see a direct correlation between lower performance and a higher price, and that when you're able to bring it down, then performance follows.
So another CTV sort of expectation I wanted to talk about was measurement, because one reason marketers got excited for CTV is because we felt like, okay, it's finally time to be able to buy television, like the reach and the brand building power, the storytelling of TV, but now we can measure it more one-to-one like digital. But unfortunately, CTV remains, like linear, still tough to measure. So why hasn't CTV lived up to these measurement expectations?
I think because CTV has a lot of attributes that are firmly rooted in the digital ecosystem, it's natural to expect that it would be easy to measure results. But with all of the many factors within the CTV space that we've been discussing, like fragmentation and walled gardens, varied buying methods or platforms, and non-standardized reporting and attribution methodologies, it's really hard to truly understand the results of a campaign when different models produce different results. That's why it's really important to understand your goals for the campaign. And then, since no model is perfect, using multiple models to measure that campaign and verify performance.
Another exciting part of CTV has been targeting, because that's, again, another thing that we didn't quite have on linear. What are the options for targeting on CTV, and what have you found perform best for brands?
That excitement about target, I think, can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, the ability to hone in on your target audience and eliminate the waste that we see in channels like linear is certainly valuable. But on the other hand, there's a tendency to hyper-target. I think that's human nature. Like if you find out that you can target by almost any parameter, like any behavioral indicator or many other things, it's human nature to want to be able to really like reach that exact right person. But what that does is it results in a lack of scale and drives CPMs up even further because you're paying high costs to add that data targeting in. Moreover, CTV isn't one-to-one in the same way other digital channels are, since you're targeting at the household level and there's typically co-viewing occurring. And what makes up the data segments that you're using isn't always clear. Often, you'll be in the DSP, and again, you've got access to probably like 100 different data providers that have thousands of different segments. And so you're just looking at how the segments are named. You don't really have insight into who's truly makes up that segment. How is somebody qualified by their online behaviors or sometimes offline behaviors to be placed in that segment? How often is that data being refreshed for that segment? So it's especially important if you're looking at something like car intenders. I might be in market to buy a new car this month. I purchase one, and then next month, it doesn't make any sense to hit me with an ad. So there's a lot of factors that go into that, and we really just need to be careful vetting out providers in order to understand how they source their data and how often it's refreshed. And when you do that, like targeting can certainly have its place, but you also just need to keep in mind that you want to make sure your target isn't too narrow. I've also seen success stepping away from third-party data segments or first-party data segments, all of those traditional data segment targeting, and using contextual targeting and other bid stream indicators as a way to effectively reach an audience more efficiently. While it seems counterintuitive to marketers with a digital background that less targeting can produce better results, what we've seen so far with our clients is promising.
So taking a super simple topic, targeting on CTV, and complicating it even further, how do marketers need to be thinking about data privacy and the future of cookie restriction? Like, how will that impact CTV?
I think there's absolutely an impact across all digital channels and programmatic, and that includes CTV. So CTV isn't affected as much in some ways because you're using IP addresses and device IDs rather than third-party cookies. But when you introduce that third-party data segment targeting, you're reliant on data signals that are collected with the use of cookies. Currently, and it seems to be an announcement every year, Google has pushed off cookie deprecation by yet another year. So using data segments is still possible in CTV and other digital channels with the use of a privacy-compliant household device graph. But whenever cookies do go away, that will change and marketers will need to rely on different forms of targeting to reach their audience. One that's making a comeback more recently, just to revisit contextual targeting, which is not reliant on cookies in the same way. And then the use of first-party data, either the advertiser's CRM data or the publisher's data, it's going to become increasingly common as a proxy to the signal loss that will happen when cookies are truly deprecated.
Which is like a little ironic because it starts to feel more like linear, like what we were so excited about.
Just stepping back and going back to how things were before we had all of this data, like it or not. It's a little close for comfort sometimes, the things that they can learn about us.
Well, history repeats itself, doesn't it? We all just want the cable bundle back now. So, Marrika, speaking of changes, CTV has had a lot of them. What do you think are the most significant CTV trends that you think marketers should be aware of?
I think for a long time, the industry has been focused on the shift in viewership from linear to streaming. But things have reached a point where it's no longer a question of whether people are streaming. Elena, just thinking back to all the stats that you talked about at the beginning. And it's really shifted to figuring out and looking at how they're accessing it. There has been a proliferation of subscription streaming services that has driven some of the trends that we're seeing now. In order to watch the most popular shows, you have to have a subscription to Hulu and a subscription to Netflix. And oh wait, now you need a subscription to AMC Plus to access some specific show. What that's done is drive up the overall cost of streaming that now rivals the cost of the cable that consumers originally cut the cord to avoid. So they've reached a point of subscription fatigue and are actively looking for alternatives to bring those costs back down. What we've seen is for all of the SVOD providers like Max, Netflix, and Amazon Prime that used to be ad-free are introducing ad-supported tiers at a lower cost. There's also been significant growth in FAST channels, which are free ad-supported TV channels that are often accessed directly through your smart TV. These are things like LG channels and Samsung TV Plus. And Elena, those could be a good alternative for you as you learn how to deal without cable. All that experience actually is very similar to cable because you're able to browse through live content there. And so we're seeing a lot of adoption there, especially for people that be accessing things like local news. We're also in the early stages of seeing consolidation across services. So for example, Warner Brothers Discovery and Disney announced last week that they're going to offer a cross-platform bundle that includes Max, Disney Plus, and Hulu. And Comcast, I think it was just this morning, they are going to also offer a discounted bundle, and I think it's a few different services, including Netflix, to their subscribers. But until that happens, fragmentation is still an obstacle. While we're starting to see premium networks make their inventory accessible through major DSPs like we saw recently, with Disney making Disney Plus and Hulu inventory available through the trade desk, some of the biggest providers remain walled gardens like Netflix and Amazon Prime. If you want to access their inventory, you're back to the same targeting, measurement, and frequency issues that we discussed earlier. But ultimately, what all of these things have done is create a lot more inventory where marketers can reach people. And that increase means over time, CPMs will come down, making it easier for marketers to achieve the performance they're looking for.
So there is hope. There is hope to come.
Yeah, we just don't know exactly when.
Yeah. Marrika, I'm starting to think you could have a side hustle to help people like streamline their streaming like services. I'm starting to think I'm overpaying a little bit for what I'm getting. So a lot of the people that listen to this show are going to be either buying CTV or they're interested in it. So I wanted to get practical. If you could give just one piece of advice to a marketer who's looking to start CTV or improve what they're doing with CTV, what would it be?
Marketers often focus on adding CTV to their marketing mix before considering the best way to approach it. But it's really important to understand how to define your audience, how best to target that audience, how to execute the campaign, and how to measure the results. When you take that time to plan and think about what your business goals are, you'll be able to understand whether the campaign positively impacted your business goals and establish an initial performance benchmark to inform how your testing strategy should evolve.
And last question, what do you think marketers should be most excited about and then also most cautious about when it comes to CTV?
I think that marketers should be excited about CTV as an evolving channel that can extend reach past linear TV and allow access to audiences that are no longer consuming linear, like those cord nevers. The ability to target and the inherent addressability that doesn't exist in linear means that there are really cool insights that you can get from CTV. But you have to remember that your audience isn't only in streaming and that you need to be planning holistically. That's really key, as is approaching your targeting strategy thoughtfully and executing through a DSP with a solid measurement plan in place.
Thank you, Marrika. You are truly a smarty pants. And I would say that anyone listening to this, if you're thinking about investing in CTV, if you're already on CTV, go back, listen to it again. And whether you work with marketing architects or someone else, you too will sound like a smarty pants if you show up to a vendor call and you start dropping some of this knowledge.
I mean, that was a master class. Like, I'm going to have to listen to that 2 more times myself. So good stuff. Whew.
I had to edit it down just to make sure there wasn't too much information.
If that's the dumbed down version, I'm worried for myself and my own knowledge.
Just a light topic.
Okay. I wanted to wrap up with something fun because we've kind of been hard on CTV today in some ways, but we're also excited about it. We like streaming, but there is so much streaming content. It's so fragmented. It can sometimes be hard to find a good show to watch. So I want everybody's latest and greatest streaming show recommendation. So Marrika, you're our guest of honor. We'll start with you.
The most recent show I've been watching is a show called Hacks on Max. And it's actually in its 3rd season, but it just got released. And it's about, an older comedian in Vegas and the younger comedy writer that she hires. So it's a good one.
I have really, I just finished it and I loved it on Amazon Prime, which I got to say doesn't usually have my favorite shows on it. Fallout was terrific. It was Christopher Nolan's brother directed it. Fantastic.
Yeah, I think, Marrika, you were talking about Fallout the other day. Did you watch Fallout?
I watch a lot of shows halfway, meaning that my husband watches them and doesn't wait for me, and then I just kind of half hear them. So yes, I've seen part of it. No, I haven't seen all of it, but I might have to go back and watch it.
I'm also a Max supporter with Conan O'Brien Must Go. He travels to Norway and Thailand and Argentina and Ireland, and it's sort of like a sequel, it feels like, to his podcast. Like, he reconnects with like the fans that he met on that. So it's pretty funny. I mean, Conan, like, how do you not love Conan? Well,
I'll add a new platform. Yeah, I've got a different platform for us. I'll put in a vote for Peacock. I just watched Apples Never Fall. It's a mini series. It's just about, I think, like 6 to 8 episodes. And it's a great kind of like drama, great acting. Yeah, and I think a lot of people would like it.
Wow. Haven't heard of that one.
I got to turn back on my monthly subscription to Max to watch some of this and then promptly turn it back off again. It sounds like.
I know.
Yeah, I'm part of the problem with the like consistent streaming revenue. Just like on, off, on,
no, the
off,
streaming
on, off.
services are part of the problem. They'll have to consolidate some more.
That's it for this episode of The Marketing Architects. We'd like to thank Ayana Claphockey for producing the show and Taylor De Los Reyes for editing. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and if you find the show valuable, please leave us a rating and review. And if you'd like to hear more from us, subscribe to our weekly email newsletter. It's built for marketers seeking research-first analysis of the latest trends. You can go to marketingarchitects.com/newsletter to subscribe. Now go forth and build great marketing.
You roll the R in the first name, Marrika.
You can do that if you like.
I can't roll my R's. I've tried. I can't do it.
Marketing Architects.